Maria had worked for the Henderson family for 15 years, cleaning their mansion with quiet dedication. She knew every corner of the estate, every hidden passage, every secret the walls refused to tell. Today was different. Today, she stood at the back of the grand chapel, watching mourners file past the closed casket of 23-year-old James Henderson, the beloved only son of billionaire Richard Henderson. The official story was a tragic car accident. Everyone believed it. Everyone except Maria. 3 days earlier, she had been dusting the library when she overheard James arguing with his father. The words burned into her memory like acid. "I won't let you destroy those people's homes for your development project," James had shouted. Richard's response was cold, calculated. "You'll do as I say, or you'll regret it." The next morning, James was dead. The police ruled it an accident without question. Money, Maria learned long ago, could buy any story it wanted. Now, as the priest began the final prayer, Maria noticed something that made her blood run cold. Through a gap in the chapel's side door, she saw the funeral director checking his watch nervously. Behind him, 2 men in suits whispered urgently. One of them was Dr. Raymond, the family's personal physician who had signed the death certificate. The other was Victor Chen, Richard Henderson's head of security. Their faces were pale, strained. Dr. Raymond kept glancing toward the casket, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air. Something was terribly wrong. Maria's instincts, honed by years of observing the family's dark undercurrents, screamed at her to act. She pushed through the crowd, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Stop!" Maria's voice shattered the sacred silence like breaking glass. 200 heads turned toward her. Gasps rippled through the congregation. Richard Henderson's face transformed from grief to fury in an instant. His jaw clenched, eyes narrowing into dangerous slits. Victor Chen moved immediately, his hand reaching inside his jacket, but Richard raised a finger, stopping him. The billionaire understood that any violence here would raise questions he couldn't afford. "What is the meaning of this?" Richard's voice was silk-wrapped around steel. The priest froze mid-prayer, his book trembling in his hands. Maria walked down the aisle, each step requiring courage she didn't know she possessed. She was just a maid, invisible to these people for years. Now every eye burned into her. Her uniform suddenly felt like armor. Her truth was her weapon. "I saw something," Maria said, her voice steadier than she felt. "The night before James died, I saw bruises on his arms. Fresh ones. Finger marks, like someone grabbed him hard. When I asked if he was okay, he told me his father was trying to silence him." The crowd erupted in whispers. Richard's widow, Catherine, clutched her pearls, her face a mask of confusion and dawning horror. She looked at her husband with new eyes, as if seeing a stranger. "This is absurd," Richard declared, standing. "This woman is delusional. Grief has made her irrational. Victor, escort her out." But Maria didn't move. She pulled a folded paper from her pocket, holding it high. "James gave me this 2 days before he died. He said if anything happened to him, I should open it. I should have read it sooner. I should have protected him." Her voice cracked with genuine remorse. The paper trembled in her hand like a white flag of truth in a war of lies.dr. Raymond suddenly collapsed into a pew, his face ashen. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered, but his voice carried in the stunned silence. "Richard, tell them what you made me do." The billionaire's composure cracked for the first time. His confident mask slipped, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. Victor moved toward the doctor, but Catherine Henderson stood up, blocking his path. She was a small woman, but her voice carried the weight of a mother's breaking heart. "What did you do to my son?" Catherine's question hung in the air like a death sentence. Richard tried to reach for her, but she recoiled as if his touch burned. "Catherine, not here. We can discuss this privately." But Maria unfolded the paper, her hands shaking. She read Jamesy's words aloud, each sentence a hammer blow. "If you're reading this, my father has done something to me. He discovered I was working with journalists to expose his illegal land acquisitions. He threatened me yesterday, said accidents happen to people who betray family. I'm scared. I think he's capable of anything." The chapel erupted into chaos. Mourners stood, shouting questions. Cell phones emerged, recording everything. Richard's carefully constructed empire was crumbling in real time, broadcast to the world. But Maria wasn't finished. She pointed at the casket with a steady finger. There's something else. This morning, I was cleaning near the funeral home's delivery entrance. I saw them bring in the casket. It was sealed, but I heard something. A sound that didn't belong. It was faint, but I've been a maid long enough to know what doesn't fit. That's why Dr. Raymond looked so terrified. That's why they wanted a closed casket ceremony despite Catherine begging to see her son one last time. The priest stepped back from the casket as if it might explode. "Open it," Catherine commanded, her voice no longer that of a grieving widow but a mother demanding justice. Richard moved quickly, positioning himself between his wife and the casket. "You don't want to see this, Catherine. Remember James as he was." But his words had the opposite effect. Suspicion bloomed across every face in the chapel. Police officers who had attended as mourners suddenly became investigators, their instincts activated. One of them, Detective Sarah Morrison, pushed through the crowd. She had always felt something was wrong about Jamesy's death, but pressure from above had forced her to close the case quickly. "Mr. Henderson, step aside," Detective Morrison ordered. "If there's nothing to hide, opening the casket shouldn't be a problem." Victor Chen's had moved to his weapon again, but 3 officers immediately drew theirs, creating a tense standoff in the House of God. Richard's face went through a rapid transformation: anger, calculation, resignation. He knew the game was over. "You're making a terrible mistake," he said quietly, but he moved aside. The funeral director approached the casket with trembling hands, unlocking the seal with a key that seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. The lid opened slowly, revealing white satin lining and then the impossible. James Henderson's eyes were closed, his face peaceful, but there was something wrong with the way he lay. His chest, barely perceptible beneath the suit, rose and fell. A collective gasp swept through the chapel like a wave. Catherine screamed, rushing forward. "His breathing! My son is breathing!" Dr. Raymond collapsed completely now, sobbing into his hands. "He forced me to drug him," the doctor confessed, his words tumbling out in a rush. Richard wanted to fake his death, bury him alive when no one was looking. He was going to suffocate slowly in the ground, unable to wake up, unable to scream. A perfect murder disguised as a burial. Paramedics rushed forward, checking Jamesy's vital signs. The powerful sedative had nearly killed him, but Maria's intervention had saved his life with minutes to spare. As they lifted him from the casket, his eyelids fluttered. Catherine gripped his hand, tears streaming down her face, whispering prayers and apologies. Detective Morrison read Richard Henderson his rights while Victor Chen and Dr. Raymond were also taken into custody. The billionaire's empire, built on intimidation and corruption, collapsed in a single morning. News helicopters circled overhead within the hour. The story went viral worldwide, the maid who stopped a funeral and exposed a billionaire's plot to murder his own son. James woke up 3 days later in the hospital, weak but alive. His first question was about Maria. When she visited, he took her hand with gratitude beyond words. "You saved my life," he said simply. "I'll spend the rest of mine making sure your courage wasn't in vain." True to his word, once recovered, James used his inheritance to create a foundation protecting whistleblowers and investigating suspicious deaths among the wealthy and powerful. Maria became the foundation's director, her years of invisible observation finally given the recognition they deserved. Richard Henderson received a life sentence, his vast fortune seized and distributed to the families his development projects had destroyed. Catherine divorced him from prison, reclaiming her life and her son. The trial revealed dozens of other crimes, other victims, other lives Richard had crushed in his pursuit of power and control. At the sentencing, the judge said something that echoed through courtrooms everywhere. Evil thrives when good people remain silent. Today, we honor a woman who refused to be silent, who chose courage over compliance. Maria never considered herself a hero. She simply saw injustice and couldn't look away. But her actions reminded the world that sometimes the most powerful people are those society overlooks. The cleaners, the drivers, the assistants who see everything and are expected to say nothing. James's foundation became one of the most influential advocacy groups in the country, and Maria's name became synonymous with moral courage. She had walked into that chapel as an invisible maid and emerged as a symbol of truth in a world too often ruled by money and silence.